Okay, so we're gonna be live for around 30 minutes learning Sqlite on Boot.dev. I've learned it before, so I've arrived at chapter 4 is CRUD. So CRUD is an acronym that stands for create, read, update, and delete. If we compare to HTTP, the create is like HTTP post, read, get, update is put, and delete, just delete. For assignment, what we need to do now is we've created a table you call grad. It's a toy table we're using for interview practice at CashPar. We need to determine which SQL command can be used for a read operation and use it to read all the fields in all the records in the graph table. Okay. So we have CRUD. Okay. Select all the fields. Now insert statement. Tables are very useless without data in them. In SQL, we can add records to a table using an insert into statement. When using an insert statement, we must first specify the table we are inserting the record into, followed by the fields. Within that table, we want to add values to. Example, insert into statement, insert into employees. We have column ID, name, title, or its fields, and values. Now, we need to do is let's start manually adding some of the records into our users table. Take a look at the create table statement in the setup code in the app SQL. Okay. And use that information to insert the following records into the table. ID, name, age, country code, username, password, admin. 34 US. Boot.dev. We use multiple values. Samantha 29 BO Sami 93. Adding records. One debit 34 US. Debit Dell. Let's see. Okay. Next, we have HTTP CRUD database lifecycle. It's important to understand how data flows through a typical web application. So we have a front end, use HTTP to talk to a backend server, and a backend server talk to the database using Sqlite. The front end processes some data from user input, maybe a form is submitted. Okay, and then we do an HTTP request. Okay, it's just a summary of the diagram here. So a front end typically communicates with a database directly to add a new record. Nope. The create in CRUD map to which SQL statement? Create. Which SQL statement and HTTP method? Okay. Create, insert, post. Auto increment. Many dialects of Sqlite support an auto increment feature. When inserting records into a table with auto increment enabled, the database will assign the next value automatically. In Sqlite, an integer ID field that has the primary key constraint will auto increment by default. IDs. Depending on how your database is set up, you may be using traditional IDs or you may be using UUIDs. Sqlite doesn't support auto incrementing a UUID, so if your database is using them, your server will have to handle the changing UUIDs for each record. Okay. Using auto increment in Sqlite. We are using traditional IDs in a database, so we can take advantage of the auto-increment feature. Different dialects of Sql will implement this feature differently, but in Sqlite, any column that has the integer primary key constant will auto-increment, so we can omit the ID field within the insert statement and allow the database to automatically add that field for us. Okay. Assignment. Let's add some more records into a user's table, but allow the database to automatically increment the ID field. So this time we don't need to add ID. We can use our previous code. Can we copy? No ID. No ID. The second one. So we have auto increment IDs. Lane and Tiffany. Manual entry. Manually inserting every single record in a database would be an extremely time-consuming task. Working with raw SQL, as we are now, is not super common when designing backend systems. When working with SQL within a software system like a backend web application, you will typically have access to a programming language such as Go or Python. For example, a backend server written in Go can use string concatenation to dynamically create SQL statements, and that's usually how it's done. Alright, and then we can put the value name, age, and country code. SQL injection. The example above is an oversimplification of what really happened when you access a database using Go code. In essence, it's correct. String interpolation is how production systems access databases. That said, it must be done carefully to not be a security vulnerability. Question is, every time someone creates an account on Boot.dev, Alan or Lane has to manually add them to the database by handwriting a SQL query. Of course not. Within backend systems, SQL queries are typically generated by code. All right, count. We can use a select statement to get a count of the records within a table. This can be very useful when we need to know how many records there are, but we don't particularly care what's in them. Here's an example in Sqlite. Select count and we put star or asterisk in the parentheses from table name. The asterisk in this case refers to a column name. We don't care about the count of a specific column. We want to know the number of total records, so we can use the wildcard. Okay. Our business strategy team at CashPa wants to know how many users of the app we have. We can't use the ID number to calculate the count because user accounts can be deleted. Use count statement to retrieve the number of records in a users table. Is that right? Right. Again, HTTP CRUD database lifecycle. We talked about how a create operation flows through a web application. Let's talk about a read. Okay, so user send a GET request. Client send a GET request to the backend, and backend select the database, return the data, and send back to the client from the backend. We'll use an example. Okay, so they just described the diagram here. The HTTP method that generally corresponds with a SQL select statement is an HTTP get select. Which happens first? A GET request is made. Where clause. In order to keep learning about CRUD operations in Sqlite, we need to learn how to make the instructions we send to the database more specific. Sqlite accepts a where statement within a query that allows us to be specific with our instructions. If we were unable to specify the record we wanted to read, update or delete, making queries to a database would be very frustrating and very inefficient. Using a where clause, so we just kind of put the condition, select column name from table and put the condition here. This field select only the name field of any user within the users table where the power level field is greater than or equal to 9,000. Wait, how can we need to know the username of all the users in our user table that have admin privilege. Retrieve them. Admin privilege is admin. To know the username. So we use true or one. Let's see. What if we use true? That would be an error, right? No error. Well, because we can either use true or one here. Okay, so I guess that's it for today. Let's learn again maybe tomorrow.